Welcome back to Newsfeed PM. Let's get into some business news now. Heads of state, governments, private entities and global think tanks are assessing and making sense of an imminent Trump presidency and what that will mean for Africa and the global economy. Now, trade, alliances, development and geopolitics will be heavily influenced by the direction taken by the world's largest economy in the next 5 years. Now, to discuss this and other pressing economic issues, we're joined by former Finance Minister and Chairman of Nhlanhla Afrika, Nhlanhla Nene. Mr. Nene, welcome to Newzroom Afrika.
Thank you very much, and to you and your viewers.
Now, we've all been spectators, and we now live in a world where Donald Trump is U.S. president again. Are different governments, business leaders setting up war rooms and think tanks to see what this will mean for their respective interests going into the next 5 years?
As can be expected, the United States of America's economy is one of it's the largest, and it remains an economic powerhouse. So it is important because it also impacts on all our economies as well.
Closer to home, South Africa has had a delicate relationship with the White House, especially on our differing views on the wars happening around the world, with the African Growth on Opportunity Act as well that we've re-pitched to the US, the war in Ukraine, and South Africa's stance against Israel. Do you think South Africa's approach then for the next 5 years will be slightly different, given that Donald Trump is now the US president?
I don't think so. I think it's more not about personalities. It's more about each country's, policy positions on matters of this nature. And I would imagine South Africa will, continue to hold its stance on matters of, humanitarian importance, and also its country's diplomatic stance will remain the same.
Now, it's not yet known how President Trump will approach the international trade, but he has made concerning statements during his campaign trails on things like higher trade tariffs for countries like China and Mexico, and should then be the time for the continent now more than ever to action things like the Africa Free Trade Area and bolster the African Development Bank to make sure that we are more independent and wean ourselves off the U.S. trade?
Look, I think the world has changed quite dramatically in the past few years, with the emergence of a number of other trade blocs, but also a number of other, economic communities, and, you have the BRICS in place. You have also our ACFTA, as we have correctly pointed out. All of those would actually provide a completely different set of circumstances that everybody else would have to actually be quite astute and agile in navigating. And I would imagine America would do itself a favor by, studying those trends a bit in order to be able to continue. I don't think they have the luxury to behave as they have done in the past.
We now talk about an emerging global south. A few weeks ago, in fact, we saw the BRICS Plus leaders raising the conversation around weaning themselves off the dollar in terms of the reserve currency being so dominant in trade, and them choosing to trade amongst each other using their own currencies. Do you think this will matter to the US in terms of global trade going into the next few quarters?
All of those developments will definitely matter. There is no way they can be ignored completely, because that constitutes a very large portion of the trading community that the US would want to continue. At the end of the day, there are global players in a global environment that has rapidly been changing, and there are quite a number of disruptions in place.
Now, you're the chair of the think tank and consulting firm, the European House Ambrosetti, and you'll be hosting a forum attended by those CEOs, the ministers and economists that we talked about earlier, and other influential personalities from around the world. What are the most pressing challenges and key topics the captains of industry and government leaders will discuss at this forum?
Well, for us, this coming week, the issues that would really be at the top of our agenda is the African geopolitical business and investment outlook, sustainable food supply chains in the region, the critical raw materials, and the new industrialization. Chief Executive's views also will matter a great deal on the African business, health, and the economic development and the regional integration in the region.
African countries are trying more and more to trade with each other. How concerning then are the developments that we're seeing in Mozambique?
Indeed, quite concerning. But I think it is also a test of the resilience of some of the systems and structures that have been put in place. And I think we just need to find a way of navigating those. The European community was also rocked by its own issues, right up to Brexit and all sorts of things. But the instability and also political unrest are actually quite of concern.
There'll be a lot of leaders from around the world at this particular forum. What then is South Africa's business elevator pitch, do you think, in 2024, given that we have a free Africa Free Trade Area and a few things to pitch on those tables? What is top of mind then for those leaders?
Top of mind is to actually find those collaboration between various economies. South Africa also pitching quite high, but a number of areas of where we need to find synergies, where we need to share views on how best we could actually take advantage of the various opportunities that each of the countries bring to the table. South Africa is going to be at the center of it. But, the region in general, because at the end of the day, our view is that we are better placed to be able to play in the global space, united as the region, but also as the continent.